how to set boundaries. Before we get into that, there's a couple of things I want to address. First of all, so I have to share that setting boundaries can be one of your greatest tools in your tool belt that you have that can help you when you are feeling overwhelming negative emotions within a particular circumstance or within relationships that are moving in a direction that is not beneficial to you. And you can feel all these red flags within you that something has to change. And instead of finding yourself stuck in a situation or in a relationship, setting boundaries can be a huge key to move you into a place where you start to feel safe again and you start to feel empowered again within that situation or within the relationship that has become difficult. We want to set boundaries when we feel like we're saying yes to everything around us. We have an issue with saying no, and our time is eaten up by all of the commitments that we have in our lives. So boundary setting is good in that situation. We want to set boundaries when another individual and their behavior towards us makes us feel violated or uncomfortable, or that the relationship is moving in a bad direction. We need to set boundaries when others have high or false expectations that they've placed on us. And boundary setting will help bring that bar down a lot more so that it's actually a healthier situation for us and we're not being pulled to extremes to make this other individual or even a work situation happy. It's good to know that some boundaries that we set are going to be non-moving boundaries, and that's going to reflect a lot of things such as our core values, our understanding of our self-worth, our value, as well as our identity. So some of those boundaries we set are going to be unmovable. There's a good reason for that. Other boundaries we set could be more flexible for a particular situation or a relationship that are allowed to be removed depending on how the other individual responds to the boundary setting that we have, or the relationship grows, or the situation changes. I think that's wise to know. Boundaries are more easily created after we understand our own priorities in life. Also easily created when we know who we are, especially as believers in Christ, when we know our identity in the Lord. Boundaries are more easily created when we know how we want to be treated and we understand our own values as well as our core belief systems. When we have a good handle on all of these types of things, setting boundaries becomes a little bit smoother and more easier for each of us. If I feel like a boundary needs to be set in place, I will identify the red flags that I'm feeling within my own body. Your body will communicate to you that you feel unhappy about a situation or uncomfortable or overwhelmed, or you feel like others' expectations on you are a little bit high. And you want to listen to those signals that your body gives you, such as you'll feel a little anxious around a certain person, or you even will feel nauseous going into a situation that you're starting to think that boundaries need to be set in place. So listen to the body's signals given to you that something needs to change. When you feel like something needs to change, then the next thing that I do is I go to the Lord about it. I seek Him in prayer over it. I tell Him how I feel about a certain situation or a person in my life, sharing with Him the negative feelings that I have in response to how I'm being treated or in response to any expectation placed on me that I just simply cannot meet. Through that, it gives me clarity, and I kind of journal it out, write it out, the things that I don't like, why I don't like them, and then I discuss this with the Lord. And sometimes I can do this going on a long walk, or this can take a matter of days where I'm actually trying to process something and it's just taking a little bit longer to come out of me what needs to take place. If it's a very difficult situation that I have to address, it's going to take more time for me to establish the boundaries that I do need to set or decisions that I have to make that are going to cause, certain consequences. But ultimately, pull me into a place where I feel comfortable and safe again and not feel threatened on any level. I decide the boundary that I want to set. I will write it out. And I think this will be better if I give an example. So let's create a scenario. Let's create a scenario. Let's say that Susie was a friend of mine, and every time we were around each other, she ends up giving me backhanded compliments, which has happened to me before in my life. And I'm starting to feel really uncomfortable about this because that's a negative behavior being done towards me, and it's not a healthy relationship. How am I going to set a boundary with Susie so that she won't continue continue to give me these backhanded compliments, a little passive aggressive behavior, I will write it out, how it makes me feel when she does this, so that I can get clarity with what's going on within me. What emotions am I feeling? What are the red flags that I have? I really want to identify the behavior that I want not to be happening against me. I don't want to, condemn that person. I don't want to judge this person, but I do want to identify the behavior that is wrong. I'm going to also write on a piece of paper or in a journal, in a notebook, what boundary I'm going to put in place. And I'm going to also decide if it warrants me to do a verbal addressing of the issue, or if I'm going to set a boundary silently where that other individual doesn't know about it. And it also depends on the relationship. It depends on how close I am with that person. It depends on how that person is going to respond to me. What will go into that decision is the pattern of how they responded to me in the past, if it's worth confronting the behavior, or if I should just establish a boundary and then with my actions allow it to unfold. So what I'm going to say to myself is that when I come around Susie and she starts to give me backhanded compliments, how am I going to respond? Will I address it in the moment and say, I don't feel comfortable that you said this to me. It feels like a backhanded compliment. If you continue to do this, this will impact our relationship and how often we hang out? Or am I just going to do a behavior in response to what she's doing? If she gives me a backhanded compliment, my response will be, I'm just going to walk away and not continue the conversation. I will probably say, I have something else to do. So that would be kind of a silent boundary. If it continues to happen, then I'm going to limit my exposure to this friend, so I won't hang out with them as much anymore. It could be worth me confronting her with if she's a really close friend and we really need to work this out. And it could be worth me not confronting because maybe it's an acquaintance that I work with and I don't really want to go into the whole confrontation. Something that you have to establish for yourself within each particular situation and relationship of how you want to respond, how you want to set a boundary. And there are some situations that you do need to confront, such as more of a marital relationship. There are some things that you need to address in order to set boundaries. You don't want to just walk away from your spouse without giving understanding of what's going on. That's a closer, tighter relationship. You want to have good communication. You want to be clear with what you are actually doing. You don't actually have to use the word, I'm setting this boundary. You can say instead, if you continue to speak to me in this manner, I am going to not participate in this dialogue and I will leave the room. And also we need to go and get counseling, those kinds of things. Your behavior, whether somebody calls you too much and you just don't answer the phone call all the time because you're setting that boundary of, I don't want to give up all my time talking to this person on the phone, so I'm going to set a boundary and only answer it once a week. That is also a quiet boundary setting. You're communicating to a person non-verbally that, hey, I'm only going to answer this phone once a week without having to say it. Anything else that I need to say about boundary setting? I would say that if the relationship ends up being toxic, something I've been talking about for a while now, toxic relationships. You've set boundaries. You've been very clear that you don't want to be treated a certain way, and that person continues to act in a way that you've clearly said, I don't want this behavior done towards me, then you can intensify the boundary that you've set. You can start off with softer boundaries, and then you can end up with hardened, fixed boundaries. Now, I forgot to say before this video ends, if you need to set boundaries as a result of reprioritizing your life and you're saying yes to this and yes to that and you're just feeling overwhelmed, like I said, set your priorities, reevaluate what you want to do in your life. You can't do everything. Evaluate who you want to pour energy and time into in your life, what relationships deserve your time and energy. And then you can say to yourself, I will say yes to these kinds of things and I will say no to these kinds of things. And if something comes across your lap and someone says, hey, can you volunteer to do such and such? I'd advise you not to say yes so quickly. Allow yourself time to think and reflect if this is something you actually want to make a priority in your life. Because what we say yes to with things in our lives, we're having to remove other things that maybe we really want to do. So be very mindful and wise that you don't have to give a response right away. One rule I have for myself is when somebody asks me to do something, this is a personal rule, I give a 24-hour time frame before I can respond to their question in order for me to double check that I'm not being a people pleaser, and also to check my priorities again. And I also want to make sure that if I commit to whatever's being asked of me, that down the road, I don't become resentful towards the person that asked me to be involved because I start feeling overwhelmed in my own life. It's not their fault. It's my fault for saying yes. I think that's about it. I don't want to talk too much because this video is way too long, and I apologize for that. But these are some tips on how to set healthy boundaries. Okay, that's it. Bye.